seriously, this franchise hasn't died yet. It's time to talk about Despicable Me 3. If you've been paying attention to my channel, then you'll know I'm not the biggest fan of Illumination, and I'm not the biggest fan of Despicable Me. Sure, the first film was alright, I thought it was a decent movie, but then they really started to milk the franchise with a sequel that was mediocre and a spin-off which was just but now that we've got the third Despicable Me movie, is it a step up from the previous movies, or is it just a perfect middle-of-the-road film? Let's take a look. After being fired from the Anti-Villain League for failing to take down the latest villain, Gru finds himself in the midst of a major identity crisis, but when a mysterious stranger shows up to inform Gru that he has a long-lost twin brother who desperately wishes to follow in his twin brother's despicable footsteps, he will rediscover just how good it is to be bad. So, I guess I'll start off by saying that this movie is certainly a lot better than the Minions movie, but is it really that good? Not really. This movie feels like Shrek the Third, where Illumination just kinda ran out of ideas and just throw a bunch of random ideas together just to make this movie. The main plot is what it's trying to be, Gru and Drew are united just to stop this evil bad guy, but then they throw in these other subplots which just feel like filler. There's one where Lucy's trying to adjust to being a mother, there's one where Margot ends up getting involved with romance, Angus is trying to find the real unicorn, and the Minions end up abandoning Gru and end up in prison. It's what they fucking deserve, you little shits. But in doing these subplots, it just adds a bunch of filler to the movie, and I feel like all of these could have just been made into short films, which Illumination probably could have done if they actually thought that was a good idea. Yes, I know Despicable Me 2 kind of had subplots, but in that movie's case, at least the subplots actually serve to the main story. With here, they're just all thrown in together just because they need to make up the runtime for the movie. And the main plot itself is just predictable. It's the whole protagonist finds out that he has a twin brother, which has been repeated to death so many times in both cartoons and animated movies. And of course, the humor isn't really that great. I mean, that's not surprising because I didn't think all of these movies were that funny, but it just kind of feels unfocused. Sure, there were a few times I was laughing, but for the most part, I was just sitting there in boredom. And finally, I can't stand Drew. I mean, he's not the worst character in animation history, but there are times where I feel like this guy's more annoying than the Minions. Now, I will be honest, part of me wanted to like this character because I do admit his relationship with Gru is okay, the dynamic between the two is good, and he do get a few laughs out of me, but I just could not stand how much this guy screws up and his voice gets easily annoying. In fact, this guy was so annoying that when the Minions actually came back on, I was surprisingly less annoyed. In fact, in this movie, the Minions are barely in it. Drew is in it for a lot of the movie, and he is insufferable. There's even one point where Gru's like, I miss the Minions, and I can kind of understand because they're kind of less annoying than Drew, even though they're still annoying as hell, but still, this guy could be a little less annoying. Even when I saw the trailer, I thought, oh boy, I'm not gonna like this guy, am I? Okay, so there's a lot of problems that I have with Despicable Me 3. Is there anything good? Well, there's actually surprisingly a couple things that I like. For one, I actually like the character interaction. It was one of the things that made the first film alright. Sure, at times the movie's very fast, but there are some moments where it does slow down and it does have some nice bonding between the characters. The animation is pretty good. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Illumination's, well, animation, but it looks alright here. But the one thing I love the most about this movie is the villain, Balthazar Bratt, who's voiced by the South Park co-creator Trey Parker. If there's anything that made this movie even close to average, it would definitely have to be this guy. Every time Balthazar is on screen, I'm just having fun with it. And I think that one reason is because everything about him is stuck in the 80s, and I'm sure a lot of people who grew up in the 80s will really like that. You can tell that Illumination had a lot of fun animating this guy, and Trey Parker does an amazing job with this guy. Heck, I'm hoping that Trey Parker is in more animated movies because he, as Balthazar Bratt, is just amazing. So in the end, Despicable Me 3 is just average. There's some things I like, there's some things I don't like. I think the villain is great, I think there's some nice character interactions, and the Minions are barely in it, thank God. But it doesn't help that the story's predictable, the subplots don't serve anything, and of course Drew is just freaking annoying. At best, I can just call Despicable Me 3 average. It's just an average movie. It's got some positives and negatives. If you like Despicable Me, you're probably gonna like this movie, but if not, it's not anything to go out and see desperately. I guess it's not the worst sequel of all time, but if you like Despicable Me, you may or may not like this film. It really depends on your expectations. But I will give it this. At least Illumination's actually sticking to Despicable Me and not actually making it— Oh, come on! Seriously?